and welcome to NCIA's Industry Essentials Educational Webinar Series, our premier digital platform featuring a variety of programs to provide you timely, engaging, and essential education when and where you need it most. My name is Brian Gilbert, the events manager here at NCIA, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to a very special edition of our ongoing NCIA Committee Insights series today. If you are just joining us, please note we'll be conducting Q&A at the conclusion of the presentation, so please post any questions that you have to that public Q&A bulletin board that you'll find along the bottom toolbar within the Zoom platform. Even if you don't have a question yourself to contribute, please give any questions that are worthwhile an upvote and send the most popular questions up to the top of the feed for our panelists to consider. And what are we waiting for? Let's get this show on the road. So, in today's session, members of NCIA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee will lead a discussion surrounding the tools, knowledge, and resources needed in preparation of raising capital with a special focus on creative ways to do so in the cannabis space. We've got an all-star panel of experts, so I don't want to take the mic for any longer than needed. Thank you all to our NCIA members for joining us this afternoon. And with that, please enjoy today's session entitled NCIA Committee Insights, Capital Raising and Deal Flow for Social Equity Operators and Applicants, being moderated by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager, as well as the host of NCIA's Cannabis Diversity Minute, broadcast live every Wednesday on NCIA's Facebook page, Tahir Johnson. You've got the room, Tahir. Take it away.
All right, what's going on, fam? I'm glad to see y'all all here joining us for this outstanding webinar. Like Brian said, capital raising and deal flow for social equity operators and applicants. I'm really excited to, for one, welcome everybody from our social equity scholarship program that's out there. This is just, one of a series of events where we're hoping to educate the community. And I'm really happy to have all of these esteemed members of this panel to share this information. Like Brian said, I'm Tahir Johnson, Membership and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager here at NCIA. And prior to coming into the cannabis industry, I actually worked in finance. I was an investment advisor, and wanting to help our people get access to capital has always been one of the biggest things that drove me to get into the cannabis industry. So I'm really excited to present this panel. Next, I'm going to introduce Mike Lamuto, who's the committee organizer for NCIA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. He started out in the industry over 20 years ago when there was no roadmap. He's the managing partner of Dow Mastery, which provides coaching, consulting, and mentoring to help others find and navigate their own sustainable roadmap in the cannabis industry. In 2019, Dow Mastery founded Boost, a social equity accelerator launched in Chicago with a focus on creating ancillary businesses. Mike and I worked together on putting together today's webinar. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and a little bit more what people are going to experience today?
Yeah, hey, thanks to hear. Really appreciate this. It's always a pleasure to work with you on everything. So, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, we just completed our first year, our inaugural year. We actually capped that year with a webinar last month on social equity in Illinois. So hopefully I think that recording is up, or it'll be up soon. So hopefully people can check that out if you're interested. And we're kicking off our second year now with this webinar. One thing I want to point out is just that, the NCA has really stepped up lately in really making an effort with diversity, equity, inclusion, and social equity with their new, they have a new program, a social equity scholarship program. And so our committee this year, we're ready to hit the ground running this year and really provide a lot of support in this area. We got a lot of great initiatives. We're producing a lot of great content to help support the social equity scholarship program. We want to make sure that program isn't just some flash in the pan, but that it actually has a long-term impact. So we'll look forward to creating more content like this. If you're passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion in the cannabis industry, like the rest of our committee is, feel free to reach out anytime. We're here to, what topics do you want us to talk about? How can you support? How can we support? This is going to take a lot of effort. This isn't going to just be about one webinar on fundraising, but this is going to take a lot of effort and a lot of moving. And I'm really glad that, Tahir brought this topic up as something we can put together because it is something that's so important. It's a huge barrier that a lot of social equity applicants face. And so I'm really happy to be putting this together with the rest of the committee. Our new chair is Khadijah Adams, and she's here today to kick things off. And I'm really stoked for our panelists today. You know, we've been having talks with some of these folks over the last couple months, and it just kind of came together. It was just like a kind of a no-brainer. Hey, do you guys want to be on this panel? Because I think this would be perfect. And I think people really need to hear your stories. So, and hear like how you guys have done it. So, and how you've helped others do it. So with that, you know, Tahir, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get a lot of great perspectives today. And first up, I have the pleasure of introducing, like Mike said, the new chair of NCIA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Khadijah Adams. Khadijah is the president and managing member of Khadijah Adams LLC and Girl Get That Money. Cassandra Khadijah Adams is a mother of 4 amazing adult sons, grandmother of 10 beautiful grandchildren, and she's originally from Sugar Land, Texas. Texas in the house. Khadijah started her first business while she was raising her children as a single mother. In 2014, she and a business partner formed MIPR Holdings, LLC, a cannabis consulting and investor relations firm located in Aurora, Colorado, where she serves as the founder and senior manager partner for 3.5 years. In 2017, her company was acquired by C.E. Hutton, a business development and management firm in Denver, Colorado, where Ms. Adams currently sits on the board as the vice president. She's also the founder of the Green Street Academy, an online education platform that teaches the basics of investing in the marijuana industry. And she's the co-author of the Minority Report, annual marketing analysis of minority-owned companies in the cannabis and hemp industries. Ms. Adams is a motivational and public speaker. She sits on the advisory board of the Color of Cannabis and is the new chair of NCIA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee here at NCIA. Khadijah, how you doing today?
I am doing great to hear. How are you and how is everybody on the committee doing?
I'm good. It's always a good
panel. So good to have you guys and good to be here. Thank you so much for having me here. You know, want to thank everybody for being here because we all know that it's no secret that, you know, the prior prohibition of cannabis disproportionately and adversely impacted people in communities of color. And we know that social equity is the fair and just and equitable management of all institutions serving the public directly or even indirectly by contract or otherwise, and as well as the fair and equitable distribution of public services. And we all know, first of all, that it has not been fair for people of color, and it should be, right? We all know that social equity, it should not be something that is discriminated against. It should be something that is equally distributed, regardless of our race, our religion, our orientation, and otherwise. So in an attempt to counter this history of disparity, many states and cities where cannabis has been legalized for either medicinal or recreational use, they have implemented social equity programs. And although, you know, they've lowered the cost of these applications, social equity applicants still find themselves, you know, in need of raising capital. And so one of the things that we wanted to do, and when Mike and I had this conversation, when Tahir and I had this conversation, what we wanted to do was, you know, really have this conversation today. And our panel is here to discuss raising capital as social equity applicants, you know, the different strategies of raising capital and how they did it. And then we'll end with a short presentation that, you know, I'll cover what you can do to get your business investment ready, along with a free course that's designed to help you dive just a little bit deeper into preparing your business for raising capital. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to you, Mike or Tahir. But thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Khadijah. And, you know, I want to make a point, you know, to say, you know, I think it is really important that we highlight these stories of people of color in the cannabis industry, like each of these brothers that are joining us for this panel that have all achieved success in different lanes. You know, especially today, as a Black man in America, waking up to news about Brother Jacob Blake, you know, and what we're continuing to see going on in our community. I'm just really proud and happy that we can have our platform to elevate these brothers and talk about, you know, tell their stories and help to do something in our community and make an impact. So first up, I want to introduce Kareem Webb. Kareem Webb is an entrepreneurial activist and CEO of Fourth Movement, a Los Angeles-based firm that vets, trains, finances, and partners with individuals from communities who've been heavily impacted by the criminal justice system to own and operate competitive retail businesses. The primary goal of Fourth Movement is to cultivate human potential through empowering people while building community, improving outcomes, and engaging culture in an authentic and impactful way. Kareem believes the realization of opportunity happens when you inspire hopefulness in people. Webb is also co-owner and operations partner of PCF Restaurant Management, a multi-unit franchisee of Buffalo Wild Wings. Kareem holds numerous board positions, including the Los Angeles Board of Airport Commissioners, the California Community Foundation, Every Table, the Living Through Giving Foundation, #Lunchbag, and the Brotherhood Crusade as a corporate board member. He is also a venture partner in the On Purpose Ventures, an early stage venture capital firm investing in the development of small business with the goal of democratizing access to business ownership. Seun Adedeji. Seun is the founder and CEO of Elevate Cannabis, a national dispensary chain with stores coast to coast. As the youngest African-American man to own a cannabis dispensary, Seun has been on the front lines of the legalization process in multiple states. He's grown Elevate to become the foremost Black-owned multi-state operator with a brand licensing program that empowers minority entrepreneurs to benefit from social equity legislation, start their own business, and create wealth for their communities. He brings significant commercial real estate experience to Elevate as a real estate investor and landlord. He's been featured in the Boston Globe, Forbes, MJ Biz Daily, NCIA, Leafly, Mary Jane, Cannabis Legislation News, and a whole bunch of other publications. He serves as the cannabis czar for the Black Chamber of Commerce. And we also have Brother Keaston Franklin, chairman of Halo Holding Group. Keaston Franklin is a chairman and co-founder of Halo Holding Group, which works with small businesses, veterans, and veteran-owned businesses to connect and infuse their communities with economic opportunities and sustainability. Keaston is a post-9/11 veteran who served in the U.S. Army, both active and with the Illinois National Guard as a combat medic and human intelligence. He spent over a decade consulting the veteran community in financial literacy. As a successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, Army veteran, and graduate student at the University of Chicago, Keaston is serving again, this time by giving back to his community through economic opportunity and empowerment through hemp and cannabis. Keaston has co-founded and invested in a variety of businesses, including hemp cultivation and processing and cannabis. Halo Cannabis has recently submitted applications in Illinois for adult use cannabis dispensary, craft grower, and transporter licenses. Halo Holding Group is currently expanding its Illinois and Florida operations in the hemp industry. And now that I've given you an introduction to our panel, I'm ready to jump right in and get to these questions, and start sharing some information. First up, I want to ask Kareem. Kareem, could you provide a brief assessment of the current market, including what some of the major hurdles are that social equity applicants are facing? I know you talked about a lot of different things that you've experienced, from banking deserts to limited networks. But could you, just start us off with a little bit of that?
Yeah, well, I think, like in all other areas of really existence in America, especially economically, and with respect to access to capital, for Black and brown people, things are more difficult, always have been, and continue to be the same way. In the cannabis business, it's only exemplified by the fact that cannabis is federally illegal. And so the typical ways in which you can attract capital to fund your ideas is, significantly limited. So from just from the get-go, from a foundational piece, that is the reality that you face. And so what that means is you either got to have your own capital to stand up your business, or you got to be able to attract private capital, because you can't leverage the Small Business Administration. You can't leverage any real local banking relationships that you might have, or a bank that you banked with in time. And so you've got to be able to attract capital from alternative resources. And those resources are typically people who are looking to leverage an opportunity to get an outsized return, a return that's greater than would be the case if they were just investing in, let's say, the SP, the stock market generally, that a non-cannabis related federally legal businesses. And so, I think it takes some savvy and some institutional knowledge and some, a background in venture capital, private equity, and structuring deals to be able to get access to capital to really fund ideas that you don't necessarily have to have in other startup type relationships. So there's some inherent, significant barriers to entry with respect to funding ideas or even funding a license. Social equity on the licensing side, and many of the opportunities in this industry for people of color are coming from programs that are being stood up to address the disproportionate impact of cannabis arrests on Black and brown people and Black and brown communities. But you still got to be able to fund those ideas, or else you just have a license, but you don't have a competitive business. And, the same is true for us. Even with my background as a Buffalo Wild Wings franchisee, still very difficult, especially in this market, to go out and raise capital. The cannabis industry over the last 3 years has gone from one where there was a lot of capital flowing. There were exploding valuations. Companies were going from privately held to publicly traded in Canada, primarily. And, there was a lot of cash and investors. If you had a pretty competent idea and a reasonable team, you could attract capital. To now, you've got even fewer, you've got a lot of consolidation and fewer multi-state operators or these bigger companies that control a lot of the capital and access to the capital in the space. And then the additional capital that's available are looking for distressed assets. So they are specifically looking for the ability to grow a footprint and to underpay for assets versus 2 years ago, for sure, people were overpaying for assets. And so it's a really interesting time. You have to put a premium on relationship, and you have to be able to stand your business up, your idea, your license patiently, so that you are not making decisions without vetting opportunity and vetting people. The one thing I tell folks about all relationships, whether you're borrowing money or whether somebody is getting equity in a business idea or you're partnering with someone, is these are marriages, and the character of the people and the terms of the deal are really important, because conflict is inherent and different people having different interests is inherent. And what you're going to be able to rely on is the quality of your communication, the integrity of your partners, and your deal. And what does the paperwork say? And so you got to be really cognizant of that. And for us, it's really easy for us to get excited about the opportunity to be in this business or just have a license. And we've seen with social equity programs, as they've stood up around the country, there's been a lot of issues with respect to partnerships that fall apart, matching somebody who wants to maybe fund an idea or be in business with somebody who has a license, and somebody with a license needing to be in business with somebody who has access to some capital. But there's really not a meeting of the minds in terms of how to operate, operational acumen, what the plan is for the business, and clarity about who's responsible for what and who gets what, and people being okay with that. And so those relationships break down because they're not based upon long-term relationships where you really know who you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, relationships and business, whether it's this industry or any other, is really so important. And Shayun, I think you can expand on that as someone who's actually raised capital. What do you think is something that's important for, people to understand and know, especially people that aren't taking that traditional path, right? Like, what are some of the major steps that you took to raise multi-million dollars in investments? Somebody that was raised, that was arrested at 13, but now you've been able to build those relationships to grow, elevate cannabis. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Tahir, and NCIA for having me on here. It's truly an honor. So before I dive into how to raise capital, I'm going to dive in on like my past a little bit so you guys get a better picture of where I'm coming from and how I've been successfully able to raise capital. So I grew up, I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. I moved to Southside Chicago at the age of 3. I lived there, moved around, lived in Joliet, lived in Bolingbrook for some time. In the future, I also lived in Texas, but when I lived in Chicago, Illinois, my family was not whole. I got arrested, like Tahir said, at the age of 13. I went to high school. I went to college for a little bit, dropped out of college. I took a different path, right? So for someone like me with, I didn't have a wealthy mom, or I didn't have a wealthy family. I didn't have wealthy friends. So for someone like me to go out and raise capital, it seemed near impossible. I did not know where to start. I've never ran a business before, and it was the scariest things that I ever did. I failed a lot. I failed more times than I succeeded, but with those failures, I look at them as lessons now because it made me a better businessman. It made me see things differently than most people. So the first dispensary I opened, my first shop in 2017 in Eugene, Oregon, and how I raised that capital to get started was personally, nobody wanted to invest in me. I'm just being honest. Nobody wanted to invest in me. I called friends and family, say, hey, the cannabis industry is a great idea. We should invest in this. Everybody said no. So in order to get people to believe in your dreams, first, you have to take a leap. You have to take a risk associated to, what I did was I read the laws. And I leveraged the laws. I had an understanding of the laws to go to a market that had a lower cost of barrier. A lot of people are going to limited license states. Those states have a high cost to obtain a license. You know, if you know that you don't have a tremendous amount of capital, start researching states with lower cost of barrier. So Oregon was one of those states. So I understood the laws. I understood what to do. And I used my own personal capital, right, to win a license. Once I won the license, I was able to now go to investors like my friends and family. They see something tangible. They saw something that they could hold, see, and they felt more comfortable giving me debt capital. So as a young kid, I was 23 years old. I didn't know wealthy people. And, you know, that was how I initially raised my first capital. The second round of raising capital, I had a track record. Investors now knew who I was. I had revenue coming in. Now going into a new states, limited license states like Massachusetts, for example, when we went to Massachusetts, I did not have enough capital to do construction. So what I focused on was my skill set. What was I good at? I was good at writing application and I was good at winning applications. So I knew that, and I had an edge over everyone else because I've already done this before and I've done it successfully. So understanding the laws and leveraging the laws to your advantage was one of the biggest things that really helped me out to raise capital. So instead of focusing on raising $5 million, I focused on tangible actions. What is in my power that I can currently do right now? Of course, I didn't have enough money to build out my shop. I knew that. That was okay. What I had money for was I had money to acquire the property and I had the money to go after the license. So I focused on the things that I was good at. Once I was able to purchase and win a license, host community agreement, non-opposition, now it was time for me to go out and raise capital. Now, most investors, when they are looking to raise or invest in you, is relationship based. It's all about who you know. It's all about who likes you. Like y'all, the first time I went to a multi-billion-dollar, like a guy that gave me my first $1 million, right? I had a pitch deck. I was so excited about this pitch. I worked on it for months, y'all. I felt really confident about this. And I told people, I was like, yeah, you know, I told one of my friends, I'm going to raise $1 million. It's like, no way, you can't do that. You got to drop it down to 300,000, be safe instead of getting them. And I was like, no, I'm going to raise $1 million. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So I put my pitch deck together. Relationship is everything. So one person changed my whole trajectory. And this is what I'm saying about, like, you know, like being kindness, you know, love, people think that's like weaker and different things like that is actually really powerful. Just by me helping someone in the past, they introduced me to somebody else that was able to help me when I needed help. So after I won licenses, I needed money to start construction. How do I obtain that money? I need to raise capital. So I called an acquaintance at the time, now became one of my good friends. His name was Tito Jackson, the ex-city councilor in Boston. We became really good friends. He's like my brother today, up till today. And he introduced me to a bigger MSO that was looking to invest potentially. And I went there, I gave them my pitch deck. And when I gave them my pitch deck, the guy looked at it for like 2 minutes. 2 minutes. He looked at it for 2 minutes. He was, and the whole time we were having conversations, I'm telling him, you know, we're having an intelligent conversation because I understood the market, and I was telling them how their projections were wrong. And I was telling them why their projections were wrong, because I slept in my shop for a whole year. I understand this market. Like I worked 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day for a whole year. So when I'm looking at the market, I have a different lens. I was the COE. I was the chief of everything. I legitimately was the bud tender. I was the janitor. I was the CEO, COO, whatever you called it, I've done it. So I have a high level of understanding when someone is saying this, or when I look at a market, I can tell you if a market is going to be successful or is going to fail. So I'm gonna say this, right? When he looked at my deck, he legitimately looked at it for 2 minutes, like, we're gonna give you $1 million. I said, what? I'm like, sure. In my head, I was shocked. I said, this is unreal. He's bullshitting, excuse my language. But in my head, that's what I was thinking. But that's how I raised my initial mill. And because I own a real estate company, I collateralized one of my property and I raised additional mill.
Yep. And so what you're saying was it wasn't even like the deck, it was the relationship that got you there. And I think, you know, that's something before we move on, because it's something that you and Kareem both touched on, you know, on your end, as, you know, as an operator, as you're looking to build these relationships, you know, what is it that you look for, like in a good partner, you know, potential investor? And then Kareem, as someone who's been an investor and, you know, worked with applicants, what is it, you know, what do you look for, you know, in a good partnership, you know, with someone that you're potentially working with?
My biggest lesson that I've learned in business is, while you negotiate your honeymoon, negotiate your divorce at all times. A lot of people, like, I'm as nice as I am, as nice and kind as I am, when it comes to business, we need to have an understanding. Who's doing what? Kareem touched on it a little bit ago. And I think that's why we fail, because we don't have a clear understanding of what our path forward is. Then we don't have a clear understanding if there's a disagreement, what is our path forward, right? Because everyone wakes up feeling good and dandy when stuff are going well, but when things are not going right, what is our best path forward? This is exactly what we're gonna do. I had conversation with people that was like, oh, Cheryl, you know, I negotiated one of my properties in Williamstown, is across the street from William College. We signed a purchase and sales agreement. The guy then calls me and is like, hey, Cheryl, you know, my son, you know, we wanna give the property down to our son, and we don't wanna sell it no more. As nice as I am, I do not care. I give zero cares, right? This is exactly what we talked about. This is agreement that we agreed on. This is exactly what you're gonna follow through with, and have a great day. So, or we can go to my attorney and I'm gonna sue you, and I'm gonna get your property for no dollars, $0. So I'm getting passionate about this because the reason why is I failed a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I was 23 years old and I felt like, oh, I gotta be kind. I didn't know how to be kind and also be firm. It was the hardest thing that I ever had to learn, because honestly, I'm a loving person. I'm kind. I got a daughter. I go to gymnastics. I'm all that, right? But when it comes to business, you have to understand, I'm here to, one, elevate myself and elevate my community and elevate my team. So I take this very seriously. So, you know, I'm not going to talk you guys to death, but just make sure you negotiate your wedding while you negotiate your divorce. Negotiate your honeymoon and your divorce at the same time.
Right. And then so Kareem, for you, you know, on the investor end, what do you look for in those relationships?
Character. You know, that's the number one thing. I think an investor that you want, you know, is somebody that's going to be in it with you for the long haul. So, you know, a typical investor, especially into a cannabis business, is looking for an exit at some point, and they're expecting that exit to be somewhere between 3 and 10 years. And so you're talking about a relationship on the short, very, very short, and you know, the outlier, you know, is that it might only be 3 or 4 years. The probability is that it's going to be much closer to 10 years before there's an exit. So I'm looking for people that not only have the acumen, but have the character and the motor, right? Because there's nothing that any of us ever do in life that we attempt to do that we don't have to overcome obstacles in order to accomplish it. The question is, who are you going to be when the going gets tough? You know, is the best of you going to come out, or are your traumas and, you know, the things that you've experienced in life that are all the reasons why we don't do the right thing for the right reasons all the time, are those things going to show up? And then hopefully we can get aligned on the business, right? Because we can reverse engineer the result that we want and do our best. And things either will work out or they won't work out. There are no guarantees. It's business. It's COVID right now. Like, anything could happen tomorrow. You have a dispensary in New Orleans who's fighting hurricane right now. You know, you just don't know. Mm-hmm. And so anything and everything is possible. But what you can control is your character and your behavior. So what's number one for me is, who are you as a person? And then, do you have the motor to consistently show up? Are you going to get a dividend check and it's going to be the first time you got that kind of money? And then, are you going to still be motivated to show up and do your best? Are you going to be as committed to the business outcome that we're aligned on creating? Are you open from learning from me? You know, do you have some value to add to me, to teach me something that I don't already know? Those are the things that I'm concerned about discovering. And as somebody who invests in people or raises capital in order to put other people in position to win and operate, it's, okay, I know who I am as a person, and I believe in myself, and I've had experiences in doing the right things for the right reasons, even when it's tough. But does this other person? Right. And so what are the systems? What are the ways in which we can get to know each other that would allow me to determine and see those characteristics come out in you? And that's most important.
Right. And, when I think it really is important to, character and who you are, that goes such a long way. And, those are all important things. And when you're looking at building those relationships, I think one thing that's also important to highlight, and I want to talk to Brother Keyston, because I think you did something unique, and that you actually started your own credit union, which I think is something which is incredibly important, especially in today's time. I think it's important to make sure that we have these structures to be able to keep money in our communities. But also at the same time, you've actually raised capital and did this and learned in terms of being able to help finance your business. So could you talk a little bit about, the credit union and some of the things that you've done to raise capital, and some of the, now on the lender side with the credit union, talk about that experience a bit?
Sure, Ted. Thank you guys, Mike, Khadijah, Soon, and Kareem. I love listening to, the knowledge and writing down notes myself. So you never stop learning. And so that's the very first thing I could say. And when you're raising capital, you got to be a student of your business. Soon spoke about it. You got to know your business. You got to know the ins and outs of it. If you're planning your business, you still got to know the ins and outs of it. You got to know your exit, just as much as Kareem spoke about as well. And you have to know your people. That is one of the, I guess, the toughest obstacles we had to overcome, when we were applying for our application is getting to know our people. Some of us, we were in business previously. Some of them were friends and family members. And then, you have to build this mold of an impenetrable force while you're going through this application process. And then once you get to the business aspect, you have to understand that this mold is going to break, as Soon said. And, while you're planning, make sure you're doing the exit for that. So that's the application, some of the models that we looked at. But when it comes to the credit union, you were waiting on the final charter, for Illinois on that. And we had to look and know our people. Some of the people that we wanted to go for the credit union were perfect fit, and then there are some individuals that we didn't know that we had to get to know because we were going to be in a relationship with them, hopefully, for 5-10 years. And so as we're building, this board and this community side for the credit union, because the idea of the credit union is to provide those banking solutions to social equity applicants in the state of Illinois. And then, we have ambitions for other states as long as they, provide such protections as the Illinois with banking in the legal and then medical cannabis realm. And that was the actual purpose of taking this path for the credit union, is that while we were filling out the applications for our dispensary, craft grow, and transportation, we were looking at raising capital, and there were issues. We couldn't go to a traditional bank to raise capital. We went to friends and family, and then even in some of the application process, even though the application was dropped down, the fees from $500 is what it was, I believe, back in 2014. Now it's $5,000 if you're social equity, and then some of those fees. We were looking at all sorts of ways to, at least get the application in, then get to the actual business side once they awarded the license. They haven't done that in Illinois, but that small window of in between where you can normally, if you're doing a startup business, of going to the SBA, getting a loan, or going to a bank and getting a business loan, those options aren't available in cannabis. So you got to think outside the box, just as much as Sarun and Khadijah and Kareem stated earlier. And we were like, well, this shouldn't be. There should be a way that all these other social equity applicants, including ourselves, because Illinois got rounds 2 and 3 coming up in 2021 and 2022, they should be able to go to a lending institution. And there should be, some support from that outside of what the state, because I know state of Illinois, they has Department of Economic Commerce and Opportunity. They have funding, but that's only in the event that you're awarded a license. There's this need for capital prior to the license that needs to be fulfilled in the social equity realm, or individuals, the applicants seeking licenses in the cannabis space, whether it be medical or recreational. And we wanted to be able to provide those type of lending opportunities to these applicants, so we don't exacerbate the problem of a group of individuals, or an individual, or a company that's already strapped or trying to provide for themselves and their community and their family members, getting into more debt, or the wrong kind of debt, I guess, if you will, just to get an application. Then they may or may not win. But they still have the heart and passion to be in this business, as well as provide for their own businesses. And then for those individuals who are actually in the actual cannabis industry, once they're awarded a license, hopefully here shortly in Illinois, as well as some of the other states that we're looking at, they're going to need banking solutions. They're going to need ability to deposit their checks, by being able to deposit your cash that you're I guess and some of the others can speak to dispensaries. A lot of cash. You'll mitigate some of the robberies that you could potentially have by having an institution to put it in. You'll be able to provide your employees with other benefits to help with retention. And there's a lot of limitations on that presently in Illinois. When those banking options, you can go to third-party, providers, and they can give you benefits through some of their supplementary companies. But we think that it should be in a community institution that has the heart of the community, at its best. Credit unions are very specific, and we chose this route. So we would say, oh, well, why don't you go through the banking route? Yes, you got to raise a lot of capital. That wasn't the issue, because we had to raise capital to even get get towards a pre-approval in the charter, as well as raising capital for the applications and the operations that we're looking at. But the idea is the credit union is essentially owned and managed by the community. It's for the community. You're investing back into the community. So while we're taking on this, I guess, financial burden and putting ourselves out there to support the community, and the community is doing good by, supporting these institutions that are in their community. Right now, there are 44 Black-owned banks and credit unions across the country. I think there's about 38 of them. It's not a lot. So even when Social Equity Applicants, and I spent some time in finance and insurance, about 14 years, and as these applicants are looking at starting their businesses, there's like, well, we want to go to a Black or minority-owned institution. You don't have them in every city. You don't have them in every state. And the question is, well, why are individuals looking and wanting to go to these minority-owned institutions or seeking them out? It's because we have a history of being able to support ourselves. We know what it's like to struggle. We know what it's like to have to bootstrap, business and call your family and friends to get whatever it needs. We're very good about bartering, so it makes sense to go with an institution that knows, some of your obstacles, some of your trials, and then they're willing to invest in you, and they're also investing in the community, because credit unions and banking institutions, that's where they make their money, in investing in communities. And so I'll talk all day. Go ahead, Terry.
No, man, I love it, brother, because what you're saying is important, right? As there is a real need, especially now, and a desire for people to be able to support these types of institutions. And like you said, if you don't see it out there, then you have to be the one to build it and create it, right? Because if it's like, again, there's a need for it. It makes me think of Mike. I know that you're out there in Illinois also, but you've been in the industry for quite some time. And one of the things that you and I have talked about, another method, is equity crowdfunding. Could you talk about, that strategy and how you're working with that with your Social Equity Accelerator, and, talk a little bit about equity crowdfunding as one of the other strategies people can use to raise capital?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure, people know the difference between crowdfunding and equity crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is, like a Kickstarter, right? You get a gift for your crowdfund and things like that. And, I think successful campaigns are usually around like $30,000 or so. Equity crowdfunding is a pretty new thing actually in general, and it's definitely new for cannabis. I think I'm only aware of one company that's actually done a successful equity crowdfunding campaign so far, but it's where you can do a crowdfunding campaign from your community and basically sell shares for, I think, as little as $100, which is, kind of unheard of, because usually you have to, in order to sell shares, you have to go public, and that takes millions of dollars to get to that point. So it's something we're still exploring, to be quite honest. We haven't figured it out yet, ourselves. It's something we're looking to do over the next year or so and try to basically prove the concept. Although, like I said, there is one company that's done it, but they did it for an ancillary. So right now, to my knowledge, the only way you can do crowdfunding, and the equity platform, is to do it through an ancillary as an ancillary company, not as a plant touching company. So it's something we're still exploring. And, I think the main thing is really, and this is what I'm hearing from everybody else right now, is you have to be creative. There are resources, there are options, and there are ways to figure it out, but you have to be, what's the word I'm thinking of? Resilient, right? You have to be resilient, you have to be creative, and you have to also be willing to, as Keaston mentioned a minute earlier, like, learn new things, right? And keep learning and look for relationships and new relationships. And it's these new relationships that actually bring you to new solutions. So, a lot of times people, when they're fundraising, they go and they get a no, and that's it. And they walk away and they're just like, okay, that sucks. But the reality is, a lot of the people that have told us no are people that have turned us on to new things that we didn't really realize before were options. And it's because we didn't just go, okay, whatever, bye. We actually kept those relationships going. And, you know, to Kareem's point earlier, they liked us. And so they're like, well, you know, we can't help you. That's not where we're at, but here's some other options to explore. So that's really the thing I'd like to say about crowdfunding is, you know, yeah, it's something that's new and we're still exploring it, but more than anything else, be willing to look outside the box and explore new options. Yeah.
Right. And you know, I know that we have a lot of questions out there, and I want to, you know, we'll get into answering the questions soon, but I also want to have Khadijah, you know, give a little bit of, talk a little bit about a, you know, presentation that she has in terms of, you know, helping people, you know, get prepared for financing.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at this time, but I want to thank everybody for their comments and sharing your story. And I tell you, man, it's amazing on the different ways that we can raise capital. Now we're going to talk about how do you actually prepare your business to raise capital. So let's see if we can get this party started here. Here we go. Before I get started, you guys, and I don't want to go into anything about me because Tahir did, you know, give an overview. If you want more information about me, you can go to khadijahadams.com. But I do want to make mention that this information is designed for educational purposes only and is not a recommendation or endorsement of any particular investment or investment strategy. Neither I nor any of my officers, employees, representatives, independent contractors, agents, or in such capacities, licensed financial advisors, registered investment advisors, or registered broker dealers. I am not an attorney, and I do not play one on TV nor the internet. So I want to make that clear before we get started, but I want to talk to you about getting your business investment ready, identifying your tribe, right? Identifying your team. That is very important. I am an accredited investor. An accredited investor is someone who earns, if you're single, you earn, according to the SEC, you earn over $200,000 2 consecutive years prior to investing. Also, this $200,000 a year 2 years prior to investing, and also in the year that you intend on investing, or you have assets of $1 million or more, not including your homestead. If you're married, it's $300,000 a year that you earn per year. So it's some other things too. You could also be a partner in a private equity firm or an investment firm, et cetera, et cetera. But when you are identifying your tribe, you guys, it's very important that you know who you have on your team. We're going to go into that. How do you identify your tribe, the people who you put on your team, and why is that important to investors, okay? And then we're going to talk about how investors think, and then the right investors for your business, and why is that really important? And you know, Kareem touched on it a little bit as well. Why is the right investor important for your business? And then getting your business investment ready, and what documents are needed in order to do that. Let's start off first with identifying your tribe or your management team. First of all, every single thing rises and falls on leadership. I know that's a cliche, but it is the truth, you guys. You know, having and choosing your team is really important. Just because a person, you know, has a degree or has the experience doesn't necessarily mean they have the character to be on your team. It doesn't mean that not only do they have the character, but it doesn't mean that they have the ability to execute, right? And so you want to make sure that there's also synergy with your other team members. What if that person does have the business acumen? What if they do have that MBA or that BA or BS behind their name, but guess what? They don't have the character or the personality, or they don't get along with someone on your team. That can disrupt your whole entire team, okay? What if they're not in line with your own business and your own vision? What if they have a separate vision that's totally different from your vision, okay? That's something to think about. So you're gonna wanna gather some data, gather some information before you commit. Don't just shake someone's hand and say, oh, wow, okay, they were referred. They were referred by someone I trust. Well, guess what? That's great. And it's always good to go by referrals. Everyone knows that, right? It's best to go by referrals, but at the same time, you still have to go through a vetting process. You still want to do a criminal background check. Now, to the extent to, you know, your budget, right? Because it can go as low as $25 for a background check, all the way up to thousands and thousands of dollars, depending on how deep you want to dive into it. But you also want to forget about references. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. It doesn't mean don't check the references. It means look for flaws, okay? Or both, right? Forget references, look for flaws. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, yes, you're going to check references, but this time you're going to ask the references the right questions. And the reason I say that is because no one's going to give you a list of bad references or companies or people that they had bad experiences with. I don't know anyone who goes to a job interview or who comes and has a meeting with someone and says, here's my list of bad references, give them a call. They will guarantee, you know, my situation. I promise you. And so you have to know what type of questions to ask references, because many of us are guilty of being a reference for a friend or a family member when they didn't have references. See, I'll be your reference, no problem. Or can you be a reference for me? No problem. And that's why it's important for us to know what kind of questions that we want to ask, right? How long does this person work with you? Okay. What about this person did you like the best? How did this person react when things didn't go well, right? Can you expound on that? And if you had an opportunity to rehire this person, would you rehire this person, or would you work with this person again? And if they say yes, or when they say yes, ask them a follow-up question of why haven't you? Or why won't you now? Okay. It could be that they're not hiring anymore. It could be that they are laid off. But guess what? If it's a reference that's just someone who's just giving a reference or being a reference just to be one, that question is going to get them caught up. And you'll be able to identify whether or not that's a true reference or not. Another thing is looking for flaws. The reason you're looking for flaws is because that person's flaws could also disrupt your business, right? You're looking for things that could jeopardize your business, right? And you want to make sure that you can identify those things aforetime, so you'll know what to look for, or so you'll know what to avoid, right? And then finally, you want to take a look at the man or the woman in the mirror. Is your stuff together, right? A deeper look into you as the CEO and as the founder of your company. Because not only is your team important to your investors, you as an entrepreneur, you as a CEO, okay, as the founder, you're important as well. Is your credit together, right? Can you really expect an investor to invest in you when your credit isn't together? And if it's not together, are you getting it together? And do you have a plan in place that's getting it together, right? And are you prepared, if it's not together, to share that up front with an investor with an explanation as to why it's not together and what you're doing to get it together? That's really important as well, okay? What about your taxes? Have you filed your taxes? Did you file them on time? If you filed them late, did you pay the penalty, right? Are they accurate? Do you keep your documents together? Do you also have your contracts together for every team member, your independent contractors agreement, your mutual non-disclosure agreement, right? Your non-circumvent agreement. Do you have all of your documentation together, your W-9s or I-9s or W-2s or 1099s? Do you have all of those together? Is your LLC together? Your DBA, do you have your EIN number? You want to make sure that all of your things are together as well, right? Make sure your house is in order, because I can almost guarantee you that if your house is not in order, your company won't be either. Now, what about how investors think? Identifying the right investors. First off, not all investors are created equally, okay? Remember, I just shared with you what an accredited investor is according to the SEC, right? And just really, if you want to, just go to the SEC's website and look up accredited investor, okay? And it'll give you a definition of what that is. And it's so many, and you can also check with your attorney and CPA, and they'll tell you how you can qualify to become an accredited investor. But there's also a sophisticated investor, right? And a sophisticated investor is a person who understands the risk. They understand a little bit about, investing. They know what they're getting into. They understand the numbers. They understand the business, and they're saying, okay, I understand, right? But they are limited to the amount of money that they are allowed to invest. There's only a certain portion of their annual income that they can invest in a private placement or a private company, okay? Not only that, when you're identifying the right investors for you, you're gonna save a lot of time and a lot of money, right? If you are into technology, okay, you don't wanna go to a real estate investor who has no experience at all in technology or who's not even interested in technology, right? You wanna look investors or go to investors who have a past in investing in technology or some type of history in technology, same in real estate. If you have an investor who has experience in investing in real estate and you are in real estate, right? Or you have a cultivation that sits on land that you own, right? That might be a real estate play, right? So you wanna make sure that you're identifying the right investor for you. One of the things that Kareem touched on was that you wanna make sure that that investor is gonna be with you for the long haul, that you have not only your strategy coming in, but that they have an extra strategy, but that you also have one too, right? And what is that extra strategy, and can you live with that? All right, so having the right investor is very important. Are they gonna invest? Are they gonna invest once, be in and out? Are they in it for a long time, for a short period of time? You wanna know that, right? You want to also go through the vetting process because the SEC also defines a bad character, right? If they have a felony, okay? Have they embezzled money before? Have they been red flagged, okay? Listen, I have the experience in this industry where we had to literally reject $1.9 million, okay, from a bad actor. This person was all over the internet. So you have to be careful because all money is not good money. Now, getting your business investment ready. Again, building a management team, that's critical. Why is that critical? Because if you're the only one, then you're gonna wanna look for a team, right? You're gonna wanna build a team. Why is that important? Because as an investor, when I'm looking at your pitch deck, and it's only you, and you haven't built a team, and you have no idea of who's going to come on board and help you with this phenomenal, dream that you have, right? This phenomenal business idea that you have. My thought is, if I were to give you my money and something happened to you, right? What happens to the company? Who's there? Who's going to be there as well? So you want to build a team because one person can't do it alone. You heard the saying that teamwork makes the dream work, right? So make sure you have your executive team in order. Your competitive edge. You want to know what your competitive edge is, especially when you're speaking to an investor, right? Especially when you're putting your documents together. You want to know your forecast and your assumptions, know your numbers. That is really important, especially if you're a startup. And investors already know that their projections, we know that they're not real numbers. And so you want to be as realistic as you possibly can, and you don't want to go way overboard either, okay? And then you want to know your marketplace. What market are you playing in, right? Who's your target audience? Is it women? And if it is women, what are the age groups, right? If it's men, what are the age groups? If it's families, then what type of families, right? What geographical area, which demographics are you actually targeting? Do you have a solid marketing strategy? Do you have a team in place that can help you execute that strategy? It's another reason why you need a team, right? And then finding that right investor for you. And then again, having an exit strategy. Finally, what documents are needed to get your business investment ready? Private placement memorandum, that is common. Is it necessarily needed? It's one of the documents that most people use, right? A pitch deck. Have your pitch deck together and ready before you decide that you want to approach investors, because 9 times out of 10, when we have a conversation with you, we're going to ask you to send that pitch deck before the conversation in most cases, right? And we want to see it quickly. You want to get it to us quickly. You don't want to have us tell us all about your phenomenal idea and say, oh, well, I don't have a pitch deck. I'll get it to you in 3 months, because we forget about you by then. We would have seen so many other pitch decks by then, right? And then your business plan, make sure it includes financials and a marketing plan. Remember that strategy, right? Have your executive summary or your one pager. Some investors like me, I don't start with your pitch deck. I start with a one pager. I just want to see your one pager first. If I'm interested, I'll ask for your pitch deck. I'll ask for your pitch deck. Remember that when the investor asks for your pitch deck, then send it. But if they ask you for a one pager, send a one pager. Or if they ask you for the executive summary, send the executive summary. The subscription agreement and EGRA filing, really important, because guess what? When the investor decides to invest, it's a subscription agreement that the investor signs. Your EGRA filing is something that your attorney is going to do with the SEC. And that's only if, if you're exempt, you don't have to worry about that. Okay. And then you want to have a digital footprint. Your digital footprint is your website, your social media. Okay. Really, really important. Very important to have. And let me just say this to you guys, because we don't have enough time to go through all of this. So what I did was I designed a course exclusively to share with you guys how to prepare yourself to raise capital for your business. It's called Major Money Moves, Securing Startup Investment and Making Waves in Your Marketplace. Now, when you go to girlgetthat.money, www.girlgetthat.money, for everyone who has attended today, when you use the promo code DEIC, capital DEIC, right? You are gonna get this course absolutely free. Use that promo code at checkout. This offer expires August 30th. So make sure you use that promo code, because there's 7 modules. It's gonna literally break this down, the documents that you need. It's gonna talk about marketing. Listen, you guys, it is amazing. The 7 different modules. We're gonna talk about prepping for the pitch, understanding investors, finding investors, investor outreach, nailing your first impression, and mastering marketing. All right, so that's my part, you guys. So I wanna hand it right back off to you, Tahir. So thank you so very much. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
I was just saying that was an awesome presentation, because I think you actually answered a lot of the, some of the questions that people were asking, because some of the things that people wanted to know were like, what documents do they need to be prepared? And the course that you have, it gives all the answers, right? So I think one of the things is great is that we had such a great wealth of information here, and so many different actual resources, tangible resources that people can take to be able to go after some of these opportunities. So thank you everybody for coming out. Shout out to everybody in our Social Equity Scholarship Program. We have 80 new members at NCIA as part of that. And everybody out there listening, we're happy to have you on board. I hope you enjoyed.